I never thought I would reconnect with him like this. Back in high school, we were just ordinary friends, occasionally greeting each other in the hallway. Nothing special. At that time, I had no particular feelings for him, and he felt the same. But fate seems to enjoy playing strange little jokes. On the first day of university, I walked into the classroom and saw him sitting in the corner, head down, organizing his notes, his familiar stubborn expression still there in his brows and eyes. Strangely, my heart tightened, as if I had been transported back to that carefree high school era. We had enrolled in similar majors, and our course schedules overlapped quite a bit. The first time we truly sat in the same classroom, I remember sneaking glances at him. He was still so slim, his hair a bit messy, and his eyes carried that familiar quietness I knew so well. That day, he looked up at me and smiled, and I instinctively smiled back. In that smile, it felt like it could dissolve the distance of the past 3 years. Soon, we began occasionally having lunch together, discussing difficult coursework, and sometimes chatting about trivial life matters. At first, it was just friendly mutual help, but gradually I found myself always looking forward to seeing him. Every time I saw him walking into the classroom, my heart would inexplicably start racing. That feeling surprised me and made me nervous at the same time. Once, while we were reviewing in the library, he casually handed me his notes. As I reached out to take them, our fingers lightly touched, and my mind suddenly went blank. At that moment, I realized I didn't see him merely as a friend anymore. I began noticing his every movement, the way he furrowed his brows when thinking, the way he muttered to himself softly, his focused expression while organizing notes. Every little detail seemed like a magnet drawing me in. We attended the university's orientation events together. That night, the lights on the campus field flickered, and I remember him holding my hand as we ran through the crowd, laughing so joyfully. The wind messed up my hair and stirred a chord deep within me. That evening, walking back to the dorm, he gently tapped my shoulder and said, "Long time no see. I'm really happy to get to know you again." I nodded, my heart skipped a beat, and I smiled awkwardly. Our relationship gradually warmed up. We started having dinner together, completing assignments together, and occasionally visiting nearby cafes. Every time we were alone, I could feel that familiar and comforting aura he carried. He would make coffee for me, quietly stay by my side when I was restless, and sometimes make a silly joke that made me laugh uncontrollably. Gradually, I realized that my reliance on him was not just friendship, it was something deeper. Of course, the development of our feelings came with subtle friction. Sometimes he acted a bit childish, unwilling to take responsibility for mundane life matters. Sometimes I couldn't help worrying about him, reminding him to organize his notes, finish assignments on time, or bring an umbrella. These minor frictions made me realize for the first time that he wasn't entirely independent. He was an only child, spoiled since childhood, carrying some mama's boy traits, whereas I had grown used to being self-reliant and independent. Despite this, I was drawn to him. We stayed up late together finishing assignments. He would secretly hand me snacks, saying, "Don't tire yourself out." Looking at his focused eyes, my heart felt warm. After one exam, he was so nervous his hands and feet trembled. I helped him organize his review materials, and he smiled, saying, "You're always calmer than me." I laughed softly, thinking that maybe this kind of complementarity was bringing us closer and closer. About 3 months later, we held hands for the first time. That day after class, it was drizzling outside. I held an umbrella as I walked him back to the dorm. He suddenly stopped, looked at me, and in an uncertain tone asked, "Can I hold your hand?" My heart jumped, and I nodded slightly. His hand was warm and gentle, tightly holding my fingers. At that moment, the world seemed to freeze, leaving only the two of us. I suddenly realized that this sense of familiarity, comfort, and fluttering had completely captivated me. In the following months, our relationship grew rapidly. Weekends were spent shopping, cooking, and watching movies in the dorm together. Every disagreement or minor friction was followed by mutual apologies, as if we were learning to cherish each other even more. Gradually, he began opening up about his family, childhood, and vague plans for the future. I also started sharing my dreams, worries, and little secrets from my life. The trust between us, like a thin thread, was slowly tightened by countless small details becoming strong and warm. However, beneath the sweetness, I vaguely sensed things that made me uneasy. He relied too much on his mother, habitually depending on her advice for decisions. He also often treated me as a caretaker, reminding him to eat, tidy up his room, or handle mundane tasks. Sometimes I felt exhausted, but every time I saw the genuine light in his smile, I was moved by that purity. Love is always complicated. Reuniting brought back lost emotions, but also exposed personality differences and dependency issues. We slowly adjusted in each other's worlds, from friends to lovers, from familiarity to dependence. Every heartbeat, every argument, was quietly shaping our relationship and making me realize I was experiencing a journey of growth that was both sweet and subtle. At this stage, I knew I could no longer see him as just an ordinary friend. Every meeting, every smile, every heartbeat reminded me that this relationship could change my university life, and perhaps even the trajectory of my life itself. After the sweetness of the early days of our relationship gradually faded, I began to slowly realize that there were things between us that didn't quite fit. That warmth and sense of security were still there, but the friction and dissatisfaction grew more and more obvious, like tides slowly eroding the patience in my heart. His reliance on his mother was more serious than I had imagined. Sometimes he would tell her about the little things in our lives, the reasons for our arguments, whether the food I cooked suited his taste, or when I was in a bad mood. At first it seemed harmless, but gradually it made me uncomfortable. His intimacy with his mother sometimes made me feel like an outsider excluded from decision-making. There were times when he would even consult his mother first before coming to me. For example, once when we were discussing whether to stay on campus over the weekend to do assignments, he called his mother for advice first and then turned to me with a slightly childish tone. My mom said, "What do you think?" I clenched, my teeth in frustration. This is our decision. Your mom is not part of our life. What exhausted me even more was that he started treating me more like a mother than a partner. Household chores, time management, daily details. If I didn't remind him, he would forget. Once, when we were cooking together, he was about to wash vegetables. I suddenly remembered the milk in the fridge was about to expire and reminded him, "Use up the milk first or it'll go bad." He froze for a second, tilted his head as if I had spoken an alien language. Oh, right, thank you. I bit my lip, a wave of inexplicable fatigue rising inside me. I had been taking care of myself for 3 years, so why did I have to worry about these things for a grown man? That fatigue didn't come from a lack of love, but from the passive pressure and accumulating sense of responsibility, which sometimes made me want to run away. He often seemed careless, even lazy, while I was used to independence and control. This personality difference created more and more friction. When we talked about the future, he was always vague and procrastinating. About jobs after graduation, living arrangements, or financial plans, he would brush it off. Take it slow, no rush. Listening to that, my anxiety built up bit by bit. Every argument felt like a reminder. We weren't really on the same boat. Worse still, his mother began frequently instilling her ideas about having children in front of me. At first, I didn't take it seriously. She occasionally shared her experiences, which I thought were just polite small talk. But gradually, I realized she was subtly steering every conversation toward pregnancy. You know, a mother's joy is something nothing else can replace. It's okay if you're tired now. Having a baby will bring you closer. My husband and I fought all the time until Kevin came along. Once you have a child, all troubles disappear. They're little miracles. Each sentence was like a needle pricking my heart, filling me with questions and unease. I tried to smile in response, but inside I was in turmoil. I'm only 22, we're still students, and our lives don't allow for this. Besides, I have my own plans for the future. I don't want to change my life's path because of a moment of impulse or someone else's so-called good intentions. I even began to notice that his behavior in some matters seemed influenced by his mother's hints. Chores, assignments, daily routines. He would improve a little only after her reminders, never out of his own initiative. It became increasingly clear to me that there were too many external interferences and unequal burdens in this relationship. Once, after a minor quarrel, we gave each other the silent treatment. He didn't apologize, but instead called his mother to complain. On the phone, his mother said something that sounded harmless. "Sweetheart, you need to understand his situation. He just needs a little patience." I froze, as if struck by a heavy blow. Patience? I had already given plenty of patience. When would he ever take responsibility himself? Gradually, I started questioning whether I was being too harsh, whether I was making a fuss over nothing. But late at night, lying in bed alone, replaying his attitude toward me and toward life, I realized more clearly, my anxiety wasn't groundless. It was a warning signal building up. The small frictions of daily life piled up. I reminded him to bring an umbrella, to organize his backpack, to check his assignments. Sometimes he ignored me. I reminded him of the time we agreed to go out. He delayed. I reminded him about tuition payment. He came up with excuses. Sometimes, when he complained about life's pressures, I wanted to comfort him, but inside I was boiling. Why is this man an adult in age yet still leaving all responsibility to me? Meanwhile, his mother's words hovered over me like a shadow. Every time she mentioned, "A child will bring you closer," I felt suffocated. I started questioning myself. Am I not good enough? Is there something wrong with our relationship? Am I wrong for not wanting kids? But reason told me, this is my life, and I have the right to choose how I live it. Our quarrels also began to escalate. What used to be minor disagreements now turned into dissatisfaction over almost everything. Once, while we were cleaning the dorm, he casually threw clothes on the floor. I couldn't help saying, "Can you be a little neater? This isn't your room." He rolled his eyes and said, No, stop nagging me. I was so angry I almost threw the book in my hand. We both fell silent for a long time, the air thick with repression and discontent. Those nights, I lay in bed tossing and turning, thinking about our past and present, and wondering about the future. I loved him, but my love was now mixed with fatigue and worry. I didn't know when the friction would disappear, or whether we could truly live independently together. And yet, despite all the conflicts, I still longed for the warmth and familiarity he gave me. Every time he smiled at me, every time he occasionally took the initiative with small gestures, my heart softened again. I kept telling myself, don't let little frictions defeat you. Maybe he just hasn't learned to take responsibility yet. But when I was alone with my thoughts late at night, I knew this relationship was no longer simple. I was swinging between sweetness and anxiety. In this relationship, I felt not only love, but also the pressure of growth. I gradually realized if I didn't set limits and establish clear boundaries for myself, I might lose who I was in this relationship. And this unease would ultimately lead me to face a more serious challenge, the unexpected pregnancy and the choices that followed. I had always been very careful with my birth control. Every morning, I put my birth control pills together with my other medication into a little pill box, making sure not to miss a single dose. Honestly, I had developed a kind of ritual. Every time I placed the pills into the box, I would double-check each one. But that very habit I thought was foolproof turned out to be my weakest defense. That morning, like always, I sorted the pills for the week into the box and swallowed them without much thought. I almost never paid attention to those placebo pills. They felt like a formality. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, maybe someday I should get an IUD or an implant so I wouldn't have to keep track of daily pills. But schoolwork and my part-time job always got in the way, and I kept putting it off, telling myself, I'll deal with it later. A few weeks ago, I started to notice something off with my body. My breasts were a little sore, my mood swung up and down, and I felt unusually tired. I thought it was just stress and lack of sleep, so I didn't worry too much. But when my period never came, a faint unease crept up inside me. I rummaged through my pill box, staring at those overlooked placebo pills, a wave of regret flooding me. Could I have messed up somehow? Holding the pregnancy test in my hand, I was trembling. The sunlight outside was bright, but I couldn't feel a bit of warmth. It was as if all my strength had been drained. I called Kevin, my voice shaking so badly it was barely audible. Kevin, I think we need to talk. It's urgent. He went silent for a second, then replied with impatience in his tone. I'm busy. Just calm down first, okay? I clenched my teeth, tears blurring my vision, my voice rising in desperation. No, Kevin, this is serious. You have to come back. He finally agreed to come, though his voice was still dragging. I sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my knees, tears streaming down nonstop, my chest stabbing like 1,000 needles. Minutes passed, then longer, and I felt like I was going to break apart. My body started shaking from the tension, my heartbeat pounding like a drum in my chest. I cried until I vomited, soaking my clothes with sweat and tears. When Kevin finally came back, I was still on the bathroom floor, the pregnancy test glaring at me beside my hand. He looked down at me, and to my disbelief, after a flash of surprise, a smile appeared on his face. Oh my God, babe, this is amazing. I froze. Amazing? I was sitting there, sobbing uncontrollably, in both physical and mental panic, and he thought this was good news? I wanted to scream, but my throat felt blocked. My voice shook as I whispered, Kevin, we can't. Don't you understand? We're still students. We can't afford this. He came closer, his voice tinged with excitement. But we finally have our own baby, don't we? A rage I had never felt before surged up in me. I wanted to push him away, but he stood there, the whole world revolving around his own expectations. I choked out, You didn't even think about how I feel. I just want to know why this happened. And then I noticed something. Inside the bathroom trash bin, a glint of silver foil. I leaned over and saw my own birth control pills. 7 untouched active pills, neatly lying at the bottom of the bag. My heart stopped. My mind raced. I had been so careful. How could I be missing pills? I remembered taking every single one. Terror, anger, and betrayal flooded me all at once. I grabbed the blister pack, staring at Kevin. He sat at the bathroom doorway, acting like nothing was wrong. And in that instant, I knew this couldn't be an accident. He must have known my ovulation, days, through my Fitbit, the period tracking app, or maybe he'd snooped through my calendar. I had carelessly let him access those things before. That moment, I realized my privacy had been completely violated. And worst of all, he had put his own desires above my safety and feelings. Tears streamed again as I shouted, Kevin, why? Would you do this? Do you know what you've done? Do you even care about me at all? Kevin blinked, looking almost bewildered. I just wanted us to have a baby. Our baby, I screamed, my voice sharp and desperate. You didn't even ask if I wanted one. You just decided for me? Do you know what this means? Do you know how terrified I am? He fell silent. I stared at him, my heart turning to ice. The warmth and security I once felt shattered completely. I realized that in this relationship, I had already lost control over my own life. He had made everything about his own wishes. ignoring my will and my feelings. I curled into myself in the corner of the bathroom, my tears soaking through my clothes and onto the floor. Over and over, I asked myself, how did I ever believe he would treat me as an equal? How did I ignore all the warning signs? How did I let myself end up here? That night, I sat alone in the bathroom until my voice was hoarse, consumed by both rage and fear. I knew no matter how much I loved him, I could never rely on Kevin again. I had to make my own choices, bear the consequences myself. He was no longer someone I could depend on. Right then, I made a decision. No matter how hard it would be, I had to reclaim control over my body and my life. This time, I had to fight for myself. In the days that followed, I felt completely drained. The image of those discarded pills haunted me. Anger, fear, confusion, shame crashing over me like waves. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kevin's satisfied smile when he saw the pregnancy test. That was when it hit me. He hadn't understood my fear at all, nor had he ever considered my feelings. I replayed the past weeks in my mind, searching for clues. Every time I noticed my health app had been opened, every time he casually asked, "How are you feeling these days?" Suspicion grew in me. Did he know my ovulation cycle? Was he tracking every change in my body? I felt like a fool. I had thought I was being so careful, but he had crossed my boundaries easily. Whether it was deliberate sabotage or reckless ignorance, the result was the same. I had been betrayed. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the discarded pills, tears falling silently. I wondered if I could have prevented this, if I had noticed earlier. But my memories reminded me, every time he leaned on me, every time he shirked responsibility, he was slowly eroding my sense of safety. He had never truly seen that I wasn't there to take care of him forever. I thought about our past 3 years. The warmth and sweetness were real, but in the face of this betrayal, they felt so fragile. Kevin had never taken real responsibility, always leaning on his mother or me to fix things. I used to convince myself it was just a personality difference, but now I saw clearly it wasn't a difference. It was a fundamental lack of responsibility and disregard for my choices. My friends' voices echoed in my head. "You need to grow a backbone. Leave him. Stop letting him drag you down." I tried to calm myself, but every time I thought about the possible child inside me and Kevin's glowing smile, fear overwhelmed me again. Fear of being forced into a future that wasn't mine. Fear of losing control over my life. I tried talking to Kevin, but it was useless. He kept trying to soothe me, masking the seriousness of it all with misplaced excitement. "Babe, don't worry, we'll figure it out." But while I sobbed like a child, shaking inside and out, he seemed completely blind to my suffering. I began to realize our values, our approach to life, our sense of responsibility, they were fundamentally incompatible. Every night, I lay awake, wrestling with the thought, should I tell my parents? But with their religious beliefs, I feared they would judge me or even interfere with my decision. Deep down, I knew this was something I had to decide for myself, or my life would no longer be mine. So I began secretly gathering information. Abortion procedures, possible risks, recovery, hospital addresses, costs. Each piece of information pierced me like a blade. But at the same time, it made things clearer. I had to make this decision alone. I couldn't rely on Kevin, and I couldn't let anyone else make it for me. The struggle inside me was agonizing. I was angry, yet afraid of being alone. I wanted to break free, but I dreaded the surgery and the unknown aftermath. Every time I thought of Kevin throwing away my pills, betrayal stabbed me in the chest again, and I knew this wasn't just about a pregnancy. It was about my autonomy, my independence, my dignity. I kept repeating to myself, no matter how hard it gets, I can't back down. This relationship was no longer healthy. His actions showed me that I had to take responsibility for my own life. I couldn't pay the price for his desires. I told myself clearly, this relationship is over. Kevin no longer has any right over my body or my life. And with that realization came an unexpected sense of relief, as if I had finally been pulled out from under a crushing weight. I had to take action. I started looking up hospitals, reading about abortion procedures, thinking through the recovery process and what preparations I needed to make. Step by step, I wrote down phone numbers, addresses, instructions. I was nervous, of course, but at least I was the one in control, not being dragged into a future I hadn't chosen. At the same time, I kept telling myself, this is for me, for my life. It's not giving up, and it's not running away. My life has to be decided by me. No one else gets to choose. With every breath, I reminded myself to be strong, to be clear, to handle this, and then start a new life for myself. A few days later, I finally called the hospital. The voice on the other end was gentle and professional, explaining the procedure, the timeline, the precautions. Holding the phone, I felt a sense of strength I hadn't felt in a long time. I was finally taking back control of my life. Meanwhile, I kept only the bare minimum of contact with Kevin. Every time he messaged me, "Are you okay? Can we talk?" I didn't respond. My heart had no space left for him. I knew he had lost my trust and respect. No matter what excuses he gave, I would never let myself be hurt again. In my solitude, I began speaking to myself. The tears and fear were still there, but I told myself, this isn't failure. It's a turning point. I was learning who I could trust, learning to set boundaries, learning to protect myself in crisis. Betrayal, anger, fear, they all taught me the same lesson. My life must be mine to control, and anyone who harms me, who disregards my feelings, doesn't deserve to stay in it. Amid the tug of war between emotion and reason, I finally saw clearly. Every step ahead must be firm and decisive. No matter how afraid I was, I had to face reality and make the best choice for myself. Kevin was no longer my support. The only person I could rely on now was me. I stopped answering his calls and messages, but I knew sooner or later we'd have to talk face to face. I took a deep breath, pulled myself together, and kept repeating in my head, this time I can't back down. I must fight for myself. When I went to see him, he looked puzzled, like he didn't realize how serious things were. Why are you suddenly ignoring me? Can we talk? I stood in front of him, staring coldly, clutching my phone in my hand like it was the last bit of strength I had. I tried to keep my voice steady. Kevin, we need to talk this through. He frowned, trying to step closer. I raised my hand to stop him. Don't come near me. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. No matter how angry or innocent he tried to look, I couldn't let emotions pull me away from what I had to say. I laid everything out. The pills, the pregnancy, his disregard for my wishes, and his mom's constant interference. Every word was measured, but I made sure he felt the gravity of it all. Kevin, you threw away my pills. You never asked me. You completely ignored how I felt about this. Do you know what that means? Do you know how terrified I was? He froze, stammering after a long silence. I just wanted us to have a baby. I cut him off, staring straight into his eyes. A baby? Kevin, did you think this was only about what you wanted? You never once considered my feelings. I'm not your mom. And I'm sure as hell not someone you get to control. I'm done with this. Done with you doing whatever you want without caring about me. Kevin lowered his head. I saw the panic in his face, but I knew it wasn't remorse or apology. It was just the unease of being exposed. He opened his mouth to speak, but I interrupted, even firmer this time. Don't. I've said what I needed to say. We're done. Get the hell out. My voice carried a finality I had never felt before. Deep down, I knew, no matter how he tried to defend himself, I couldn't let him pull me back in. My body, my life, my choices had to belong to me. Kevin stood frozen for a long time, like he'd been struck by lightning. His lips trembled, but no words came out. I turned, walked out of his place, every step feeling like I was stomping down. 3 years of chains, reclaiming my will. Back in my room, I finally broke down and sobbed. Tears, fear, anger, everything poured out, and for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. I started calling hospitals, arranging the abortion. I confirmed, each step carefully, bracing myself mentally. I kept telling myself, this is my choice. I control my body and my life. No one else has the right to interfere. On the day of the procedure, I walked into the hospital alone. The nurse spoke to me gently and professionally, and I answered firmly. The procedure went smoother than I had imagined. My body felt some discomfort, but in my mind there was only release. In that moment, I realized I had finally made a decision for myself, without anyone else dictating it. Afterward, I sat in the recovery area, breathing deeply, watching sunlight spill through the window. Inside me was a clarity and strength I had never felt before. Kevin, his mother, all those expectations and pressures, they were gone now. What remained was just me and my life ahead. Back home, I began piecing my life back together. I cut off unnecessary dependencies, organized everything carefully. My friends reached out, and I finally started opening up to them, releasing shadows little by little. Each morning I told myself, today I am free. Today I live for me. I knew the road wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. I started exercising again, studying, planning my future. Every decision now belonged only to me. Kevin's face might flicker through my memory sometimes, but I was no longer trapped by the past. A few weeks later, I wrote this line in my journal. I lost an unequal relationship, but I found myself. No one will ever control my life again. The future belongs to me. Sunlight spread across my desk. I lifted a cup of coffee, looking out at a world that felt new. Inside me was determination and hope. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them alone. Everything I went through had become the soil for my growth. And finally, I was truly living for myself.